All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials Are Old podcast. And Brian, I've been thinking, right? Recently I've been really getting into sociology, a thing that I've only recently got into. It's not like I went to school originally for that. And recently I've been looking into a sociological phenomena called the sigma, beta, and alpha phenomena, also known as the just cool guy sort of like
The
scenario and things
the
going on.
cool
You
guy
know what I'm talking about,
trifecta.
Brian?
The
Yeah,
guy
exactly. Yeah.
trifecta. Where there's a very cool guy and a slightly less cool guy and then a not cool guy. I have sometimes a hard time figuring out which of the cool guys I am, but I'm definitely one of the cool ones and not the one that sucks.
Exactly. And this phenomena, the sociological phenomena, is very much something that's very much rooted in science and I think is backed by peer review research.
Backed by
So
peer review research, demonstrated in nature, actively true, logical, extremely real.
exactly, 100%. And recently there's been movies made within the last 10 or 15 years that really exemplify this incredibly accurate real life sociological phenomena. And one of them is a movie called Nightcrawler. Have you heard about this, Brian? A movie about a really cool normal guy who's also
Uh,
really based in Sigma.
Have I heard about it, Taylor? It is such a relief to see a movie, to see a character on screen, and to say, that is me. That is a guy like me who beats to his own drum, who don't take no shit. A guy who is working outside of the confines of our cucked society. This is, okay, I saw this movie, Taylor, and I thought, this is my Barbie. What Barbie was for 33-year-old, millennial women, Nightcrawler is for me. I feel so seen by it.
No, absolutely. I feel seen by it too. So that's why this week I want us to review Nightcrawler. But before we get into our review this week, Brian, let's bring back our segment, Cringe Generational Cringe Week.
Cringe generational moment.
Woo! Yeah! And we were singing that cringe millennial segment. And this week, Brian, you want to do a cringe millennial segment about something that's very song and music aligned. Is that correct? A very interesting artistic debate going on in the pop and music
It's
world.
definitely interesting. It's definitely a thoughtful debate. So yeah, pop star starlet of the current moment, Sabrina Carpenter, has announced the title and cover of her upcoming album. This will be, I guess, I don't think it's her second album. It'll be the follow-up though to her breakthrough album. It hasn't really popped off this summer yet like people expected it to. So Sabrina Carpenter is known for, she's like a post Taylor Swift pop star, right? So clearly a little bit of Taylor Swift in there, a little bit of Kesha-isms. There was, kind of some self-awareness. There was some 70s soul stuff. One of her big things though that for a while now has caught the ire of a lot of people, especially Zoomers who are also her primary audience, is she's very overtly sexual in kind of a funny, unapologetic way, where she's kind of in a way that, and this is, as would consider, pretty, not inherently progressive, but pretty feminist, in that she's kind of doing these jokes where she puts herself as the aggressor in a sexual situation and someone that enjoys sex. And, she does this stage pattern, these little sketches on her concert that are kind of raunchy, not really, but it's pop music, like Madonna did shit or whatever. It's not really a big deal to me. I don't really think it should be a big deal to anyone who's under 100 years old, right? She does jokes about getting spit roasted or getting facials or something. Who cares? But it is a big deal to some of the Zoomers that listen to her. There's been an ongoing debate about, oh, is she objectifying herself? She's selling her body, she's degrading herself in some way. This is really confusing to me because this is usually amongst a similar contingent that will support, at least ostensibly, and at face value, they will say that they support OF girls, which they should. Obviously they should. There's nothing wrong with anyone who's a consenting adult doing whatever with their body, But there's this big thing of oh, is Sabrina Carpenter bad for women? Is she a pick-me? That's this big, I guess I'm not the best person to have this discussion. The whole pick-me thing. She's doing everything for the attention of men, which I'm pretty sure is not true because her audience seems to be young women and gay men primarily. But in seeming response to all of this controversy, which has been following Sabrina Carpenter for a while, she's released her new album title and cover. The album is called Man's Best Friend, has a kind of a grainy looking, kind of looks like a Polaroid of her on her hands and knees, kind of at the waist of a gentleman whose face is out of the picture, and he's kind of holding her by her hair there. It's a pretty standard, like, subby position, right? It's not anything that shocking. It's pretty in line with what Sabrina Carpenter's done. It's actually pretty in line with, like, pop artists, like I said before, Madonna or early Lady Gaga, who got, pretty raunchy, or fucking, like, Janet Jackson, did The Pleasure Principle, which was, like, a pretty graphic pop album. But we've talked before about how Zoomers, a contingent to them, are really puritanical. They're really weird about sex. They have some real hang-ups about it, and how it's kind of unnerving. There is a segment of the pop music consuming kind of audience who are losing their minds about this album cover. They genuinely believe that this should be the end of Sabrina Carpenter's career, and I'm not saying this in like a right-wing way. There's like a small but vocal number of young people who believe that this is the absolute worst thing for women. Have you seen this album cover?
Yes, I have. And it's interesting to me because this is very much like a throwback album cover from like the 90s or 2000s in a lot of ways, or maybe even like a advertisement from the 60s or 70s, which were of course very sexist times. But to me, like, when we've talked about the sort of like puritanical Zoomer thing, the Puritans thing and stuff like that, and as somebody who's a millennial and of course Gen X prior to that, and boomers to a certain extent too, like we were the generations that really were like the most sexually liberated a lot of ways, and it's really disheartening to see generations younger than us just really go back to this puritanical, very like, just very, for lack of a better word, lame way of looking at like sexual relations. It's really like sad and weird, to be honest.
It's weird, right? Like, because we've talked about it quite a bit, and I expect we'll talk about it a lot more, but it's something I can't
Because to be honest with you, like the album cover itself, like, yeah, it's a little salacious, sure, but like it's not like a picture of a girl getting like two dicks in her ass or something.
No,
like
it's
that.
like it's kind of naughty. It's kind of naughty.
Yeah, it's very PG-13, to be honest with you. It's very Tumblr 2015. It's really not that bad.
Exactly. And it's just, what is this thing in young people that's this switch that's flipped? Is it a symptom of like the overall like kind of turning back of the clock social conservatism that of course we are like living in right now? Is this just another example of that, or is it something else? Because my most generous interpretation, right, is that this is a bunch of young people who haven't had a lot of, just in general, a lot of experience or have spent too much time online, in an age where the internet was very sanitized, and they're uncomfortable around sex because when you haven't really had much experience, all that stuff seems really, it makes weird or it makes you uncomfortable, and they're overreacting. Is it like some weird misunderstanding of kind of like 2010s Tumblr feminism that's sort of mutated in younger people who kind of grew up post that period? Like, what is it? I can't quite put my finger on it, but it is really funny seeing just like what to me is a standard pop star thing. It's a hot woman who's being a little tongue-in-cheek about her sexuality. It's literally the reason that pop stars exist, right? And to see so many
Madonna was doing that in the fucking 80s, for God's sakes. And she also literally made a book that was a literal pornographic book, the sex book, yeah.
You see her getting dicked down by Vanilla Ice in it.
Yeah. Was it Tupac in that book, or did she just date Tupac? I don't remember.
I don't think Tupac is in sex. She did briefly date Tupac.
But yeah, she's getting dicked down by Vanilla Ice in a book. That's so funny. But yeah, talk about obviously the, sexual liberation thing, right? Like that book came out like 30 motherfucking years ago. And Zoomers are mad because a woman is having a PG-13 fucking Tumblr sexualized photo on her album cover that doesn't even have any nudity on it. Like, seriously.
It's also like, obviously, there's women who can talk about this better than like either of us can, but isn't one of the most, on the most base level, is when if you're thinking about like feminism, however one defines that, you're separating it, like not talking about like a Marxist analysis of feminism or like, feminism within like kind of like anti-colonialism or any of these kind of headier things. The most basic thing, right, would be like women's bodily autonomy and the idea that women experience all of the same emotions that men do, including like sexual wants and needs and desires, right? That would be the most basic thing that you would think at this stage that like everyone would be on the same page about, right? But there's this weird thing with, we talk about the Puritans, the Zoomer thing. There's, I don't know, like a misapplication of that where it's like any portrayal of sex, any portrayal of women as wanting sex or enjoying sex is somehow damaging. It seems at best naive, but at very worst, and I think we're seeing it go on a little longer than I'm comfortable with, seems pretty harmful.
Well, and that's the thing though, right? Is talk about how, men and women experience the same, sexual desire and yearning and stuff. And, somebody who's dated a lot, I've had many, I'm not going to obviously talk about my fucking body count, but I've had many sexual partners over my life. The thing that women I think appreciate more than anything else when it comes to their sexual autonomy is listening to their needs and wants and you facilitating their desires in a way that is beneficial to both you and them. And I can tell you what, that has worked out for me, I would say 95% of the time. It's really basic. It's one of those things we talked about incels in the past. They do the same thing. They come up with their own self-defeating prophecies in a lot of ways. So I do feel for incels a little bit. Obviously not like the violent misogyny part, but their sense of like their desire not being met and stuff like that, right? But like they look at their own self-defeating thing and they think, well, I hate myself, my life sucks, and women must hate me too because I hate myself. And it's like, no, you just literally have to talk to people. It's literally that simple.
Well, but that's kind of, I guess, what I'm getting at is like this weird thing of like Sabrina Carpenter's doing this album cover where she perceives herself and engages with the world as like a sexual person. And it's almost like the people who are saying that this is in some way sexist, it's misogynistic, it's damaging to women, that sort of is like, it's like a horseshoe theory of the incel thing, right? Where a lot of like damaged men and guys with problems, they have this perception that women don't experience the same feelings that they have. They don't experience like sexual or physical or emotional needs the way that they do. And the people that seem upset about this album cover are, they're kind of getting to the conclusions from a different way, but they're coming to the same conclusion that this isn't a thing, that Sabrina Carpenter shouldn't be portraying herself in this way, that it's in some way, it's so weird. And like I said, I would like to think that it's just kind of uncomfortable, awkward young people who will outgrow this phase. And when we first started talking about the Puritan thing, and for a while I was a little reluctant to talk about it because, you do run the risk always of, like becoming like a boomer complaining about the young people or whatever, right? Like it's easy to fall into that trap. And at first I was thinking like, I bet this is probably a thing that I'm imagining as like a millennial who's getting older and I have problems with me getting older, so I'm finding something to like rag on young people about. But there is like a real shelteredness, and not just in terms of like sexuality, but in terms of portrayal of violence, really in terms of a lot of portrayals of nuance. There is a group of younger people who really reject that, and it seems like they really want all of their media smoothed over and they want it to reinforce that they are good for consuming it and that there is no way it could possibly be construed as anything other than good.
No, absolutely. And, we've talked a lot, obviously, about the, sexuality component of this, the feminist aspect of this. But, Brian, I think that actually leads perfectly into our film. Talk about talking to women and having a feminist viewpoint. I think the protagonist of Nightcrawler is definitely a feminist who talks to a lot of women. Would you agree with that, Brian?
I would say that if you want to talk about someone who knows how to access and express their emotions, someone who understands their own feelings and how to relate to others, someone who can respond to the needs of the women around him, as you have alluded to, Taylor, yes, the protagonist of Nightcrawler. That is our guy.
Yeah, 100%. So without further ado, let's get into our review this week. So that, once again, is Nightcrawler. Came out in 2014. And the first trivia fact I have here, or actually I have two right in a row, but apparently during the production of this movie, both Jake Gyllenhaal and Riz Ahmed, who are the actors in this movie, or some of the actors in this movie, rode along with actual Nightcrawlers / stringers in Los Angeles to prepare for their roles, which is interesting. And, we've talked a lot in the past about, or I don't know if a lot in the past, but, we've talked about it one-on-one at the very bare minimum outside of the show. But the whole method acting thing and how it's basically just like an excuse to be an asshole for actors. But like, I do like this kind of method acting where you actually like get to like ride along and do that sort of thing to get into there. That's an interesting method acting thing.
I agree, but that's more like doing research, right? That's
okay,
more like
research, yeah.
Right. Jake Gyllenhaal wasn't like pushing a camera in like a dying guy's face.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, that would be hilarious. No, actually, that would be pretty awful. But
maybe he was. I assume he wasn't.
And there's a guy who's like dying. Is like, wait, were you the guy in Brokeback Mountain? He's like, oh shit, and then he just died.
In this particular case, it seems like it would be not necessary because I guess actors, if you're a good actor, you can probably act under any circumstances. But it makes sense to want to meet some real night crawlers or ambulance chasers in preparation for this role because that is someone that most people just do not meet in their day-to-day life, or if you do meet them, you don't know about it, you don't spend a lot of time with them, and I'm sure it is a very particular type of weird person that falls into that line of work.
No, absolutely. And this movie came out in 2014. And the next trivia fact I have here is this film was shot in about a month, which is crazy because there's so much shit that happens in this movie. The fact that it was made in like a calendar month is fucking nuts to me. Like, I genuinely can't believe that.
I did not know that, actually, because it's not just that so much happens in it, it's that the film feels, to me, it feels very well orchestrated, well put together. Like, the cinematography is really good, but also just like the way it's structured is very cohesive, it's very clean. It surprises me to learn that they got all of this footage in that amount of time, especially because pretty sure that they shoot in almost entirely on location and across the city.
Yeah, and Los Angeles is once again the second largest city in the US, and
Yeah.
it's a city that's known for filming things. So the fact that they were able to do that and organize it in roughly about a calendar month is pretty nuts. And this movie is rated R. It was directed by Dan Gilroy. It was written by him too, and it was produced by several people, including Michael Litvik, Jake Gyllenhaal himself, David Lancaster, Jennifer Fox, and Tony Gilroy, who's Dan Gilroy's brother. Dan Gilroy is primarily a screenwriter, but he directed this movie. He's been a screenwriter in a lot of the like Jason Bourne movies, which I've not seen any of them, but I know those were big movies at the time when they came out.
They're very stupid. They're entertaining, and I love the first one.
I've heard they're very dumb.
They're exactly what you expect.
The only Jason Bourne thing I'm familiar is the meme where it's like, oh my God, it's Jason Bourne. That's the only thing I'm familiar with. And I think that's the black guy or one of the black guys from like the Allstate commercials. Is. Not the most famous black guy who was the president in 24, the other black guy.
So you know what, Taylor? That would be a fun movie to talk about for the show because it's very Bush-coded.
Oh, yes. No, 100%. And then Michael Litvak is a producer. He's most well known for producing such films as Drive, which I think this movie is very much like a spiritual successor to Drive in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would absolutely say that's actually why I wanted to talk about this for the show. I got it in my head to do a Nightcrawler episode way back when we were preparing to do the Drive episode and talking about it. And we were talking about guys that we knew who really identified with that character, not all of whom were weirdos, but some of whom were. And I was thinking like, oh, this is like kind of like the shadow version of Drive. Like this is a different version of that guy. Kind of like still not necessarily a realistic version of that guy, but the quote unquote Sigma guy. I guess let's say the autism coded loner who is hyper competent in a very specific area, right? And has a hard time relating to people.
And on top of it, too, so this character is very much the extroverted social climber, somebody who's like very, superficially charming. You said the autism coded, but also the psychopath coded. Whereas, in Drive, Driver himself is extremely introverted, but also very autism coded. But like at the same time, they're similar characters, but they're kind of polar opposites in a lot of ways, like socially. So it's very interesting. And personally, I identify, if I had to choose, even though I'm not like any of these characters, to be honest, but I definitely would identify more with Driver than I do in this character, because this character honestly is kind of terrifying in a lot of ways.
This character is terrifying. So we've talked before, I know we have personally, I don't know if we have on the air, about how movie portrayals of the psychopath are often like, and I think you and I have both met people we would say are probably narcissists or psychopaths. I'm not a doctor, I don't make that, but I've definitely met people that remind me of this guy. The thing is, a lot of movies are like, this is a psychopath, and he's so charming, and he's so hyper competent, and
he's not charming. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. In real life, like psychopaths and narcissists, they might be superficially, in very brief spurts, seem charming, but in reality, if you're around them for any length of time, they're more like this guy. They are off-putting, right? They're unsettling.
Yeah, and and I have heard that from, obviously, that's part of the, psychological framework of the psychopath diagnosis, is that they're superficially charming. But I can tell you what, everybody that I've ever met that was a psychopath, I've met them, and I'm just like, I am not charmed by you at all. Especially ever since I became an adult, I am not charmed by that at fucking.
Right. And it's probably, I think this movie shows that really well. You could meet the character that Jake Gyllenhaal plays in this film, and maybe he would seem charming, or at least a little endearing for 5 minutes. If you had to exchange anything of substance with him, though, he makes everyone extremely uncomfortable, if not outright threatened, right? Or it's like sicked out.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. And I can't wait to get into the synopsis part of it, because I have so many things I want to say about Jake Gyllenhaal's character, because holy shit. And some of the Amazon reviews are fucking hilarious. I'll tell you what, the Amazon reviews in this are really funny, but obviously we'll save those to the end of the episode. But either way, let's just finish up the details real quick here. So Jennifer Fox is a film producer and former president of Section 8 Productions. And I'm like, a film production studio that gave housing vouchers to like poor people? That's weird. No, I'm just kidding. But that is the name of her film production company, which is very odd. And And, I mentioned Tony Gilroy, so he is an American screenwriter, director, and producer, and he's most well known for, once again, writing such films. And I think he directed one of the Jason Bourne movies. And he also directed Michael Clayton and The Bourne Legacy, which is, I've heard Michael Clayton is a very like dumb smart guy movie, if that makes sense. Or what was it? Like a smart movie made for dumb people? I can't remember. But
well, I definitely have I haven't seen Michael Clayton, but I remember people who really liked it, so I'm inclined to believe that.
And it's about 117 minutes long. It had a budget of about $8.5 million and it grossed $50.3 million, which is our first movie in a while that had a really high box office versus budget. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 95% critic score and an 86% audience score. So, of course, both critics and audiences like this film quite a bit. And let's get into the synopsis here. So, Lou Bloom, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And the first trivia fact I have here for the synopsis is that Jake Gyllenhaal lost 20 pounds for his role. And I think it's really interesting, right? Because, Jake Gyllenhaal, you see him, he's always been somebody who looks like healthy, right? Like somebody who's like a normal weight, like fit, attractive guy. But in this movie, he looks like emaciated.
He looks emaciated. He looks fucked up. What's fascinating about this to me...
He looks extremely sleep deprived, too.
Yeah, but he still looks like... So I love Jake Gyllenhaal. He's actually one of my favorite actors. Even when I don't like them, he's one of those guys for me. I like seeing him. I think he gives interesting performances. He picks interesting roles. The thing with this character is it strips Gyllenhaal of all of his, like, Hollywood leading man good looks. At the same time, it's so, like, it looks at every moment like Jake Gyllenhaal. It's like this weird version of him. It's kind of uncanny. He looks so oily.
Yes, he looks oily, like sleep deprived. He looks sick. And the way that Jake Gyllenhaal said it is he envisioned him as like a hungry coyote. And I definitely see that. Like a hungry predator.
Yes, that's so good.
Like a sociological, but also like a literal predator.
Like when Wile E. Coyote is like looking at Roadrunner and Roadrunner is turning into like a ham and Wile E. Coyote's like licking his lips. That's our protagonist here when he sees like a horrible murderous accident.
Yes, no, 100%. And speaking of the murderous accident, so while driving home in his beat-up Toyota Tercel, which is awesome, by the way, that is like such a dirtbag car, Toyota Tercels. I mean, 90s Toyota is very reliable, but they're definitely dirtbag cars for sure.
Well, also, when you think about the time this movie came out, it's like, oh boy, he's really driving that beater around.
Yeah. He sees a car crash and pulls over. Stringers, freelance photojournalists, arrive and record two police officers pulling a woman from the burning wreckage. And also this scene's really, I mean, this is like not even the first disturbing scene. There's the beginning scene in the movie is Lou's like beating up like a fucking like security guard and he's like stealing like scrap parts, trying to sell it to like the guy who owns the scrap yard, which is an amazing scene, by the way, because it's awesome. Also, I want to say real quick too, I love the scene where he's like trying to do his like sales pitch to the guy he just stole from the scrap yard because it's such like Sigma grind set fucking like YouTube like or TikTok like clickbait garbage. It's awesome.
Because I promise I won't get into every time that Lou gives his sales pitch because it's such a large chunk of the movie. But your introduction to Lou is he's stealing scrap metal to sell back to this like guy in construction and development, right? And he's like, "Oh, do you have a job for me?" And the guy says no because you don't want this weird fucking guy working for you.
Also, he knows for a fact that he stole, and he also beat somebody up in the process of it. That's scary as shit.
And Lou says, undeterred, what about an unpaid internship? He wants an unpaid internship at this construction company? Like, what are you talking about?
Well, and that's the thing, though, Brian. It's something like, it's like those, once again, Sigma grindset guys. Like, would you rather have $1 million or give your biggest enemy $1 million? It's like, I'd rather give my biggest enemy $1 million because it'll make me grind to, like, beat him or something.
He also refers to himself as a young person. He says a lot of young people are taking unpaid internships.
And also the other one, too, is like, would you rather have dinner with Jay-Z or $1 million? It's like that type of Sigma grindset. Yeah. Like, but if I get an internship, by the way, getting an internship in a scrapyard, I don't think that's a thing.
What the fuck did that even entail? For the record, Jay-Z told everyone that his answer to that question was to take the $1 million and that you were stupid if you said it was to have dinner with Jay-Z.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, so that's the first disturbing scene, but also this disturbing scene because like, yeah, they're literally just like filming a woman who's on the verge of death being pulled out of a burning vehicle and they're like, yeah, get the shot of her getting pulled out. And it's like, they're just like yelling like directions at it. And it's like, it's very disturbing. But the guy who's doing it is Joe Loader, played by Bill Paxton. Rest in peace, Bill Paxton. And he explains to Lou that they sell their footage to local news stations. Inspired, Lou steals an expensive bicycle and pawns it for a camcorder and a police radio scanner. So that's the thing though, is that like, he's like a GTA fucking protagonist. Like he's always stealing shit.
He's always doing side quests.
Yeah, he's doing side quests to like get money for his next grift. It's awesome.
It's
After,
also like,
oh yeah.
what is this guy's life? You don't learn anything about him. You don't learn anything about his childhood. You don't learn anything about like, because there's nothing there. At no
No,
point do
he's a
you think
husk of
like,
a human being.
yeah, what is this character's hobbies? What motivates him? What motivates him is that he wants to make money because he's living probably not homeless, but probably pretty fucking close and like on the fringe of society.
Oh
And
yeah.
all he thinks about is how can I get $300 today or something.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, we see his apartment throughout the movie, and it's like obviously a place you could live, but it's definitely not in the best neighborhood, and it's like a pretty dumpy little studio apartment. Like,
Yeah,
even just it just doesn't look very nice. And also, when we talk about how he doesn't really have a character arc in this movie, which is purposeful, by the way, that was a
yeah.
purposeful decision by
There's
the filmmakers.
yeah.
But at the same time, like all the negative Amazon reviews were like, he's got no fucking character arc, and it's like, yeah, that's the point.
Wait, I want to add to that, Taylor. He does have a character arc. The character arc is that he begins as very desperate and impotent and ends as feeling completely empowered. But his actual character, his who he is, never changes. His arc is that he ends up feeling like he will get everything he wants, right? He can openly become the malicious person that he is by the end of the movie.
You are correct, yes. But the Amazon reviewers, once again, have completely ignored that idea. They're just like, well, he's an unlikable piece of shit who
yeah,
is the
that's
same
part of
asshole. And it's
what are
like,
they
that's the
upset
point.
about? Yeah, what do they? They're like, oh, I really wish that he had gotten married to that news anchor lady and then adopted that homeless guy that he employed in his predatory business.
Well, there's another detail that I didn't include in the trivia, but I might as well right now, is that originally they wanted Lou to have a pet dog that would humanize him, but they decided that would be too extreme. So that's why he's just got a plant that he waters, and that's the most human element of him, that he takes care of a plant in his apartment.
Him having a plant checks out, because that's a completely technical thing. So Lou would think to himself, I'm going to get a plant. Plants are really nice. They make the house more livable. Also, it gives me something to think to do every day. I water the plant. I make sure the plants get sun. You know, he's just like, this is a good thing for me to do. He would never have a dog, because it would require an amount of attention and sacrifice that he would forget to feed it. It would die.
Yeah. After 2 unsuccessful attempts at recording incidents, Lou records the aftermath of a fatal carjacking and sells the footage to KWLA6. The morning news director, Nina Romina, played by Rene Russo, tells him the station is especially interested in footage of quote-unquote graphic accidents and violent crime in affluent, predominantly white areas. And also, this one's really interesting, right? Because she basically describes the very racialized, like, crime reporting that happens in America, which is something that sociologists and social justice activists, etc., have described for years. It's basically the missing white girl phenomenon, but it's extended into a more like localized environment of the LA crime scene. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
into like an idea of like invaders. It's the idea that the suburbs are being invaded, right? So the whole
and she literally says that essentially.
Yeah, that incidents in the inner city in urban sprawl, they don't really do it. But if you get something that happens in the suburbs that'll freak people that are watching the nightly news, that's what you're gonna go for. The other thing that struck me this week watching this movie. So Lou has an innate eye, right, for like devastation and for pain and what is going to look good and what's going to look salacious. It's not because he has any experience doing it, but I think it's because of his lack of like empathy and his lack of socialization. He's able to like ignore the social bounds that maybe keep even some of the other like stringers from getting as close as he gets. Either he doesn't feel shame or he just doesn't think of it as an issue, to walk right up to someone who's, just been stabbed in the neck and take their picture. It just doesn't occur to him that would be untoward to do.
No, he's like, I'm trying to get the best footage possible. I'm just gonna fucking do it. Why wouldn't I do it?
And why would anyone be mad at me for that? It's just my job.
Yeah, I'm just following orders. Not in his case because the independent contractor.
No,
but you know what I mean.
It is like, why? Well, no. What's the issue? You're hurt. I'm taking a picture of it because the news wants to. Like, he doesn't understand the intricacies of like why that is degrading to someone.
No, absolutely. And then, we mentioned his homeless assistant, Rick, played by Riz Ahmad, who is desperate for money. To give his footage more impact, Lou tampers with crime scenes. And in one case, he literally moves a dead body to get a better, shot of it, which, if you had any, identification with this character at all by that point, I really hope you're just like, oh, I don't know about that, man. He's literally moving a dead body to get better footage of, this crime scene that happened. Or I think it was an accident, but still, either way, it's fucking crazy.
I think it starts as an accident, right?
Oh, yeah.
Opens the door to him being like, oh, I can kind of fuck with things. And again, in Lou's mind, he's not doing anything wrong. The person's dead. He's just trying to get a good picture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's just a function. His body is just a function.
Yeah, it's a means to an end, and the end is for me to get the footage, which means nothing to me.
Yeah, even though there's so many scenes. I mean, literally the first minute we meet him, he's literally assaulting somebody who's literally just working like a fucking dead-end job, which is a security guard at like a junkyard.
And,
But like
yeah.
every scene in this movie, he does like something more depraved than the last scene. Like basically every scene in this movie, it is a descent into depravity.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say before, and I couldn't quite get it. He is constantly escalating. His arc isn't that he learns something, or it's not even that he becomes worse. He is who he is throughout the whole movie, but it's that he waits, and as soon as there's an opportunity where he can get something by escalating, he will do it until he becomes who he is at the end of the movie, which is like, in some ways, the most fully realized version of himself.
It is the psychopath self-actualization, if that's a thing that exists. So eventually, Lou pressures Nina into a date. I know we've talked about, I've mentioned Nina at the very least, but like, she's also a big scumbag in this movie, to be very clear. Yeah. She is just, and she's also a more identifiable piece of shit than Lou is, because Lou is a very like unidentifiable character to me, or somebody you can't really relate to, but she's somebody who like, we have all met somebody like her in our workplace, for sure.
Well, so Nina is part of the petit bourgeois. That's the best way I can describe it. Whereas Lou is someone on the fringes of society who is still bad. He is just as bad as Nina, or if not worse. I'd say they're probably similar. He's probably worse just by virtue of his actions being more overtly evil, but they're made of the same stuff. They're both social climbers. They're both people who see other human beings, their suffering as serving a function for them.
Yes, exactly. An economic function, a way to exploit, essentially. Because, I mean, this woman is essentially an exploitation artist, but she's a news anchor. Like, that's the best way I can describe it.
And neither of them are particularly deluded about that. Nina is actually very upfront when we first meet her, when she's describing to Lou what she wants from him, which is essentially things that will stoke fear in, viewers that live in the suburbs. Yeah, they're about the same. They're kind of mirror images of each other. And I think that Nina even recognizes that, which is probably why she is not as put off, initially at least, by Lou as other people are.
Yes, and on top of that too, like Lou, I think sees something in her, which is, they go on the date, and it's a very creepy, very rapey date. I'll just say that, and it's also implied that, well, I mean, he basically is like, I'm gonna fuck you, and she's like, why would I do that? I'm twice your age. It's very weird, but he doesn't quite say it like that. But you know what I'm trying to say. But the thing is, though, too, is I think the reason that Lou sees her as somebody like he wants to like, quote unquote, go on a date with, or obviously just have sex with in a way.
Well, he doesn't know the difference.
No, he doesn't know the difference exactly. But she's very much, talked about the psychopath self-actualization. She's already self-actualized in her psychopathy, and I think Lou's like, I'm trying to get there. So he's using her as a means for that reason too.
And she has legitimacy, like within the media and within the economy, which he does not have.
Yeah. So he's very much trying to be a social climber in that. And obviously he's been doing a social climber in that way too. But he's like, oh, this person has like mimicked humanity. Let me leech off of her ability to do that. I'm obviously not very good at that. So eventually, Joe, the Bill Paxton character, comes back. He asks Lou if he wants a job. Lou basically tells him to fuck off. Eventually, Lou gets the better of him by getting better shots of the crashes and accidents and stuff. Fucking Lou gets pissed after Nina's like, what you're getting is bullshit. I need better stuff. So he sabotages his van, which is hilarious. Yeah. Which, by the way, like, that's one of those things where that's like a trope forever. It's like, just cut his brake line or whatever, and then they get into a horrible crash. And that's the thing, though, too. That's actually like a really good way to, like, if you really want to get rid of your competition, is get rid of their brake lines, because these guys are like careening to get to their fucking like locations.
Oh, they're so fucking dead. And this is where we kind of enter into the segment of the movie where Lou is now approaching in his own way that self-actualization. He is now fully seen what borders he needs to break down, what he wants to do, what goals he wants to meet. He's figured out the industry, for lack of a better word, and he's sort of seeing how far he can push it.
Yeah, exactly. He's always pushing the envelope. And, Brian, speaking, I mean, he obviously just led to the attempted murder, because apparently I'm reading that he didn't die, but he was severely injured, but that's still attempted murder. Just objectively speaking, that's first-degree attempted murder, which, in a lot of jurisdictions is literally the same as regular murder. So if he were to get caught, he'd be put away for a long motherfucking time. But either way, we're getting to the most depraved part here. So in the last major arc of this film, Lou and Rick arrive before the police at the site of a triple homicide home invasion in Granada Hills. Lou records footage of the gunmen leaving in their Cadillac Escalade and of the victims in the house, and later presents footage to the station with the perpetrators edited out. The news staff frets over the ethics of the footage, but Nina is eager to break the story. In exchange, Lou demands public credit and more money. Now, the public credit part is interesting because he gets his video production company, which is hilarious because it's something that he probably just thought of off the top of his head. It's Video Production News. And it's like,
Video Production News. As if everyone is going to remember that name, that very bland name that sounds like it sounds sounds like it's a fucking like North Korean news documentary channel.
Yeah, exactly. So, police detective Frontiere, played by the actress, which is interesting because their name is Michael Hyatt, which I'm like, Michael is a female name, but hey, whatever. Everybody has their fucking names, right? Shows up at Lou's apartment to question him about his connection to the home invasion. He gives her edited footage of the incident, cutting out the parts with the gunman. Now, you're thinking, like, why would he edit out the footage of the gunman? Well, that night, Lou and Rick track down the driver to his house, stalking out the house until he leaves to pick up his partner. Lou wants to follow them to a more crowded public area, then call the police to record the ensuing confrontation. That's the thing, though, right, is that he is so underhanded that he is going to withhold evidence from a triple homicide home invasion so he can get footage of them being gunned down by the police when he tracks them down and catches them. That's crazy. That's so dangerous.
He is now orchestrating, not just, which
he's orchestrating the news.
He's orchestrating the news. Now, he's creating incidents, whereas before, he maybe in his head could make an argument that he's just documenting things people want to see. Now he is creating incidents that will cause people to die directly.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. And that's the thing, though, right, is that, and I'm just going to spoil it, these two fucking home invaders, they get fucking killed by the police, and I think a cop gets killed or whatever, which probably would have happened anyways if these guys would have been caught in another incident anyways, so it's not like he probably necessarily caused those officers' deaths or whatever. But at the same time, though, right, like, if he had footage of these guys with their license plate and faces, he could have called in and right away and avoided all of that shit in the fucking first place.
Yeah.
Or maybe had the police be able to coordinate a arrest in a way that would have caused the least amount of, like, damage possible. But he just has to get the fucking, like, footage. He has to, once again, create the news. He's just that much of, like, a fucking psychopath.
Which, again, in his mind, why wouldn't he do that? He's doing what anyone would do as far as he's concerned.
No, exactly. Yeah, he's once again just doing his motherfucking job. That's all the fuck he's doing. He's making the money. He's Sigma grind setting it.
Yep, he's on his grind.
So he tells Rick of his plans, who, we've talked a little bit about Rick, but once again, he's a homeless guy who's offered a internship where he's basically paid, I think, $50 a night, which even a decade ago in LA, that's like homeless money. I mean, he is homeless.
Jesus Christ.
But he's living in a fucking garage, and all he's doing ride-along, sure, but, like, this motherfucker, he's getting paid peanuts, whereas Lou is making actual, like, not amazing money at that point, but he's making some fucking money. But
like,
he tells...
$50 a night, that's like making nothing for this level of work, for this level of danger.
No, exactly. So, but he tells Rick of the plans, and he demands half of the reward money for locating the gunman, which, we've talked about a little bit with, the Luigi Mangione quote-unquote arrest where somebody allegedly called in or whatever, but, like, they never pay that fucking money. They never paid that money. He's arguing something that's not even going to happen, but eventually he's like, fuck, I'll do it. I'll take half, and if I don't, I'm going to tell the fucking cops on you, which, by the way, Lou is somebody who has very clearly demonstrated that he is willing to do anything, including attempted murder people at this point to get what he wants. I would never threaten this motherfucker. I would never directly threaten him in his own vehicle. Rick is a real dumbass for doing this.
Yeah, it's been established, and it was actually established right at the top of the movie. There really is not a bottom to Lou. He is not a guy that you see and you go, oh, that's a scary guy, that's a threatening guy. But there is just not a bottom to what he will do to get what he wants.
No, absolutely. And I say this without any kind of reservation, but this is the kind of motherfucker that Nazi Germany would have hired in the Einsatzgruppen or at the fucking death camps. Like, this is that motherfucker. Like, this is not somebody that you threaten in their own vehicle. This is just not a thing that you do. So, and, spoilers ahead, this is just the thing is that, oh, never mind. I'll get to that point because that is another very revealing scene at the very end. But either way, so they do track down the gunman at the restaurant. Lou phones the police, warning them that the suspects are armed. The cops arrive. They exchange gunfire. One of the guys gets away. The other guy, the home invader, dies. He follows the police. He's a literal, like, fucking, like, ambulance chaser in this scene where he's chasing the fucking cops trying to, and that's the thing in LA. So I don't know if you know this one, Brian, but, remember back in the 90s and, with OJ and all that, there were just, like, helicopters and cars, like, always chasing, like, and that's the thing, in California, they have very lax laws behind that. So it's basically, like, legal for them to do that, which is crazy when you think about it. Because, like, in Wisconsin, Brian, and in Milwaukee, which is even more, I don't know if lax is quite the right word, but they don't want, obviously, more damage. But, like, there'll be people on the highway going 30 miles over the speed limit, and then cops will, like, drive for, like, a minute and then be like, I'm not bothering with that. But in LA, they will chase people to the ends of the earth if you're, like, a speeding, like, person. Like, it's crazy. It's so dangerous, but they allow that in most incidents in, like, Los Angeles. It's crazy to think about.
Cars and society built around freeways is great. I'm glad we did it.
Well, especially in a city like LA, which is incredibly car, especially for how big of a city it is. Like, LA is basically, like, fucking Green Bay level car dependent. It's crazy. Like, I just don't understand. Like, fucking Chicago and New York City are cities that are pretty much, I mean, obviously car cities too, but they're more built around transit than most major cities in America.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
LA being the second largest city in America is so car dependent. Remember the smog thing back in like the 90s? How that was going to be
Yes.
like, it was like the most polluted city in the world for a while because of how car dependent it was. But New York City is like a fourth of its like emissions, even though it's a city that's like 3 times its size. It's nuts. It's
Insane.
horrible.
Not the way that a railroad was meant to be run.
Well, that's the thing, Brian, is that's the ultimate bad guy in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, is the guy who's trying to build the freeway.
Yeah. Yeah, that is literally the point of the movie, is that someone's going to invent the freeway and it's going to destroy society and destroy ingenuity and local autonomy.
Exactly, yeah. So that's the real villain. But yeah, either way, so they do the car chase. Eventually, cops get the better of the home invader. And it's interesting, too, because, like, after that, you know, I think the cop dies in that incident, right? Or, like, he's, like, severely injured or something.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
he's severely injured, yeah.
But either way, so he asks Rick to get a better view of the gunman, who he claims is dead. But then the gunman comes out, shoots him multiple times. And as he's dying, Lou films him, which is the ultimate fuck you in that instant. It's so fucking disturbing. It's so disturbing. Like, this guy who he's known at this point for months now, and is somebody who he's built, not obviously a personal relationship, but a very professional relationship with him. And the second that this guy fucks with him, he just, like, sets up his murder, his death, and he films his death. Like,
watches him die.
It's crazy. It's nuts.
And then uses the fact that his partners, that he, like, leverages it in conversation with people to demonstrate, like, how much work he's doing on the front lines.
No, it's absolutely fucking crazy. So, and then, you know, the gunman, he gets shot by police. He films that. And then eventually at the very end of the movie here, the last like 15, 20 minutes, Nina's awed by the chase footage and expresses her devotion to Lou. The news team discovers that the home invasion was actually the criminals breaking in to steal cocaine that the homeowners were stashing. Nina refuses to report this information to maximize the story's impact. Once again, creating the news, because the actual news story is that it was a essentially like drug deal / whatever gone, or, you know, stealing of drugs. Which, by the way, whenever you hear about an incident where like a whole family was murdered, and then like most of the time it's like a family annihilator or like a drug deal or whatever combination of that gone bad. That's literally always what it is. Like, nobody's murdering a whole family in America at this point unless you're a dad who lost his job, or you're somebody like the family like stole like a gang's drugs. That's all that happens.
Because it's too much trouble. It's too much trouble in any other case.
Well, there was a story that happened here maybe about 2 or 3 years ago where like a guy who was in a gang or whatever, and like I think one person stole drugs, or like there was like some gang fallout or something, and he murdered the whole family. There was like 6 people he murdered. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I never followed up what happened to that, but they found that guy like 2 days later, but I'm sure he's never getting out of fucking prison. I mean,
but yeah, I would think.
So in the very end, police try to confiscate Lou's footage as evidence, but Nina defends her right to withhold it and airs it immediately. Lou voluntarily speaks with Detective Frontieri. While being interrogated by her, Lou fabricates a story about the men in the Escalade following him, which of course is not true. Frontieri knows he is lying but cannot prove it. And, you know, we talked about obviously how he leverages it. Like, she's like, you filmed your partner's dead body. And he's like, and, you know, I also loved his phrasing at the end, or he has a phrase at the end, which is a quote or whatever. It's like, if you're seeing me, it's probably the worst day of your life, which is like, damn.
He's like saying this to explain himself to the detective. I think the thing is, he thinks it's going to sound kind of funny and charming, right? Where she's saying, like, you filmed your partner dying. And then he says, I like to say, if you're seeing me, you're having the worst day of your life. Like, as she's, like, trying to get him to confess to, like, this person's death, you know, his involvement in these people's death.
Yeah, he's like, hardy, har, and it's like, nah, that's weird, bro, that's weird. And then at the very end, Lou hires a team of interns to expand his business, saying that he will not ask them to do anything he is unwilling to do himself, which is really insulting because he literally asked Rick to film that, and then he got murdered. So that's the ultimate fuck you. But, and I also love it too, because he has these interns, and he once again has this like fucking like 80s, 90s style fucking like, you know, Sigma grind set, like motivational speaker thing, where it's like, I'm gonna hire some interns, and you're all gonna follow me, and we're gonna be a good team together. He's doing like the pep talk bullshit. It's awesome.
He's doing like WeWork shit.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the end of the synopsis here. Now, before we get to our final thoughts, which I do have quite a few on here, so I do want to get into our amazing Amazon reviews. So I have some pretty good ones. Genuinely, the like high star ones are actually like pretty thoughtful that I included on here, but the negative ones are definitely not. They're very dumb. But I do want to obviously go to the high ranking ones first. That's what I usually do. So our first review here is from Mike, who gives us 5 stars. And the header of the review says, very relaxing film. And it's like, I would never describe this movie as a very relaxing film, to be honest with you. This is like one of the most tense movies I've seen in a while. I would never describe this as relaxing.
Yeah.
Whose comfort movie is this?
Is this guy like Lou?
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that right now, Brian. So the body of the review says, I use this movie to fall asleep sometimes. Not that it's boring. Quite the opposite. Well, to be fair, okay, never mind. There is just something relaxing about the mostly night scenes. Okay, fair enough, I guess. I mean, I like going out walking at night. I get it. The music and the way Gyllenhaal speaks in the film that is somehow comforting, which I don't agree with that part. Like, he's very, very unnerving in his speech, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
And the last sentence is great. Even though he is a sociopath, Lou Bloom is very likable. And it's like, no, he is not. He is not likable. He's also not a sociopath. He's a psychopath. But he's not likable at all.
Who is watching this movie and think, like, even at the start of the movie does everything to make you find this character off-putting and disconcerting.
If somebody said that Driver was likable, I could say, okay, sure, because he is somebody who is, protecting somebody who is at a disadvantage.
And he wants love, and he's like, on a basic level, he's trying to do something to help someone.
Yeah, so if somebody said Driver was likable, I'm like, okay, I mean, I don't necessarily think he's super likable, but, he's somebody who's not, like, a complete monster, sure. But there's nothing likable about this character. And, I think we've talked about this, or other people talked about it, this is a very bare minimum, but talk about how, like, there's movies that people watch, like, I couldn't fucking identify with anybody, so I didn't like the movie, nobody was likable. And it's like, there's plenty of movies where you can make an unlikable character that's still an engaging story, right? But, like, this guy is unlikable, but it's an engaging story. But, like, if you're watching, like, a comedy and the characters are unlikable, and we're not talking about, like, a dark comedy, like a regular comedy, and they're unlikable, that really ruins a movie. But, like, this motherfucker's not likable. I don't know what to tell. If you think this character is likable, you need to look at yourself.
I mean, like, we always say here, there's lots of ways to interpret a movie, there's lots of ways to read a movie. The type of person that watches this movie, sees Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler and goes, cool guy, I like this character. I don't know if we watched the same movie. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Driver, so this next review highlights the similarities. So Sean B gives us 5 stars. I think this person was literally Sean Bean, but I could be wrong about that. Probably not, because he doesn't die at the end of the review. But they give this 5 stars. And the header of the review says, Nightcrawler is a movie about the birth of a supervillain. And the body of the review says, if Drive is a movie about the birth of a superhero, which, I mean, maybe maybe like Zack Snyder's Superman, I guess, but hey, whatever. Nightcrawler is a movie about the birth of a supervillain. Jake G, who pointedly describes this film as the rise of a DP, director of photography, okay, I guess, delivers his best performance to date as Lou Bloom, an unhinged sociopath who finds his true calling as a stringer, contributing gruesome videos to a struggling news organization. In a business where you're only as good as your last captured tragedy, Bloom will do anything to be successful, even compromise the integrity of a crime scene. If you're a successful person to see a lot of yourself in Bloom, you might want to rethink the way you want to be living, which, yeah, that's fair. As we mentioned the other guy, like if you identify with this character, you might want to look at yourself a little bit more clearly.
I was thinking while watching this, I bet there are people who have watched this movie, recognized themselves in Lou Bloom, and then not liked the movie because of that.
Oh, I bet, yeah. If you're looking for a happy ending that makes you feel good about things, I might stay away from Nightcrawler. This is an unconventional film, but in my opinion, it was the absolute best of 2014, a year that got overshadowed by Birdman and Whiplash. Also a sleeper and underappreciated performance by Riz Ahmed that put him on the map, setting him up for later projects like The Night Of. Nightcrawler is a pitch-perfect comedic thriller that gets my highest recommendation. So, honestly, I agree with this review for the most part. Obviously, as we mentioned, this was kind of a repudiation of the last reviewer indirectly.
Which it's almost like a direct response. Yeah.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. And then our next review here is from Matt, who gives us 4 stars. And the head of the review says, the lead of the story is such a horrible human being and has no shame in what he, ellipses. And the body of the review says, the lead of the story is such a horrible human being and has no shame in what he does to get what he wants. And for some reason, I couldn't look away. This movie is great. I enjoy movies that dive into the mind of a psychopath. Oh yeah, Bill Paxton is in it. Haven't seen him in anything for years. He's a great rival in it. And it's hashtag put Bill Paxton in more movies, Hollywood. Well, can't be doing that anymore, unfortunately, unless you want to do like an AI recreation.
I appreciate this reviewer's candor, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Bill Paxton's going to take a rain check on any future Hollywood productions, I think.
We'll see. We'll see.
With the rise of AI, Brian, who knows, unfortunately. God, let's hope not.
I'm just enjoying all of the new tributes by R. Kelly to Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traore.
I'm liking all the AI Cumtown episodes that are coming out now because it's an actual thing now.
Oh, that's so cool. Cumtown fans are so cool.
Well, speaking of people who are smart and funny, our next review here is from WL, who gives us 3 stars. And the header of the review says, Night Yawner. And the body of the review says, I could not handle this movie, LOL. Really fun idea, and I enjoy the actors. But the suspension of disbelief being so perilous to such a funky ideal that someone is dropping into such a psychopathic lifestyle. And it just kept going. Haha. And that's the review.
I'm not sure what this person's issue with the movie is. Does he know that this is a real thing that people do to make money?
I guess, but also it's just one of those those things where we talk about, obviously the likability thing. It's like, well, I need my characters to be likable, otherwise I can't watch it. And it's like, you might want to expand your horizons a little bit. Well, it's the same people that say, like, I can't watch a movie unless it has a happy ending. And I'm like, well, then you're, like, getting rid of a lot of, like,
Yeah, you're
creative...
closing yourself off from, you're only seeing like a very small type of movie then.
Exactly. And, if somebody's in a bad mindset and they don't want negativity, I can understand that, obviously. But if you're just like,
Sure.
well, I don't want anything bad in my movies, but, like, then just fucking watch Ted Lasso. Like, just fucking watch Ted Lasso then.
Like, this review talks about the suspension of disbelief being too much. What in this movie is so unrealistic? I gotta say, that's really not.
I think the only thing that people did mention in the review is at the very end, like, he doesn't face any consequences.
Which he
like,
would.
he definitely would face consequences. But also, like, they end the movie as, we don't know how much longer that, like, video news production van, like, intern, like, that could have been, like, 2 days later. Like, especially for investigations like this, that could take a long time to process. So he could be, like, charged and convicted in the near future. We just don't see that.
Well, and they wanted to have the like creepy ending of him, starting his internship,
We talked about once ago in Drive. At the very end of Drive, like, there's so many people who like wish cast like, oh, he's gonna live and then he's gonna like exact revenge, and like he just dies at the end of Drive. Like, we just don't see it, but he dies like 2 hours later. It could be the same thing with this movie.
Some bad takes about Drive, and so I want to, since we're making this sort of a spiritual sibling episode to that, make clear he's dead at the end of Drive. If you identify with the driver, fine. It's a cool character. It's a great movie. First of all, he dies at the end of it. Second of all, the reason that the driver is the way he is because of his own extreme capacity for violence. That's why he can't relate to people. So, like, the idea that Driver is just some quiet, shy guy who has a heart of gold and then drives off into the sunset, that's not what the fucking movie's about.
No, not the fuck at all. So, and it's very much like this. Like, I think Lou Bloom probably would have stepped in it a little bit further to get, like, convicted, or, the investigation with the footage at the very end could have led to him getting charges, but we just don't see it. That's all. Like, you don't have to suspend your disbelief to believe that local investigators would just take a little bit more time to charge him with more shit. That's actually
they wanted to make
common.
Sure they could get him, yeah.
Yeah, they want an airtight case, exactly. And then our last review here is from Rich, who gives us 1 star. And the header of the review says, let's drive around all night and film horrible accidents for money. And it's like, do you want to do that? Or are you saying that's a criticism of the movie?
What?
Okay. And they say, this movie is pretty lame. I couldn't wait to see it after seeing the previews last fall, but it was sadly lame. Louis Bloom has no life, but one night he sees a guy, Joe, filming people who were hurt and decides, hey, I could do this too. The rest of the movie is Louis getting out every night listening to police scanners for the next big story to sell to the news. That's the whole movie. You'll find yourself wondering when the big twist will happen, because you will think to yourself, this can't be the entire movie.
He doesn't understand the movie. He doesn't understand. He thinks, like we were just talking about, he thinks the point of a movie is that you think the main character is cool and you watch them do cool things. So because he doesn't identify with Louis Bloom, he's like, I don't get it.
Well, and that's the thing, we talked about like the twist, right? Which a movie having a twist is such a hack thing. Like, a movie doesn't have to have a fucking twist. There is no twist. Like, the movie is, once again, as we mentioned earlier many times, is presented immediately. He's an unlikable piece of shit psychopath who is always escalating. That's the point of the movie.
It's the opposite of a twist. They tell you who Louis is right away. They dig their fucking heels in and they reinforce that more than you could ever have expected. But this reviewer thinks that the point of a movie is to watch a movie, look at the protagonist and go, wow, that guy's cool and he's doing cool things. So something about this movie and them not connecting with the character, because you're not supposed to connect with this character that way, made them go, this is really boring.
And the last part of the review says, it never does. I don't recommend this to anybody unless you want to watch a boring movie where Louis drives around all night filming horrible accidents just to make money. And, I looked at this reviewer. I'm assuming this person is very old. They're probably just, a very shallow media consumer. And I wanted to go into their Amazon profile to find a funny reviewer to like, and that's the thing with a lot of Amazon reviewers, right? To get a good insight into them, you just have to go into the other things they reviewed. And you always get just a keyhole glimpse of who they are, right? And you know what? I found the perfect review that exemplifies the type of person this is, Brian. So I found another review, and I think they have like the highest like recommended reviews, like, or people found this the most helpful for this product. So they reviewed a product a couple years ago, which is the Nariva Ultra Decaffeinated Clinically Tested Nootropic Brain Supplement for Mental Awareness, Memory, Focus, and Concentration.
Okay.
And they give it 3 stars. They said it worked for them, but they complained in the review that the pills were too big, so they couldn't swallow them properly.
Did you break them into halves?
They might be gel tablets, but either way, like, bro, why are you taking a nootropic brain supplement? That shit doesn't work. I don't know what to tell you.
Like, this is so funny. To me, it's like, it's not just that. Is that like the Alex Jones pills that he sells?
Yeah, oh yeah, he talked about fucking nootropics all the time. That's the Alex Jones like fucking right-wing grifter supplement shit.
That's for people who are used to do ephedrine when it was legal, and they're looking for a substitute to it.
Exactly, yeah. So this motherfucker just got caught into the like InfoWars like supplement like realm, and this guy's being like, "This movie's stupid. It's boring."
Hang on, we don't understand how stupid this movie is because we're not taking this nootropic brain supplement. If we were taking it the way that this reviewer is, we would understand how boring and lame this movie is. His brain is so overpowered by the supplement that he can't even waste time on Nightcrawler.
You know, we're such fucking blue-pilled soy boys, Brian. We don't even know why the frogs are gay. We don't even know why.
Oh, I know why. I just don't have a problem with it. I like it.
Yes. Well, speaking of gay frogs and nootropics and just all those things in general, I think that ends our review here. So, because our Amazon reviews are done, do we have any final thoughts before we get to our pluggables, Brian?
Yeah, Nightcrawler is really good, and I want to really drive this home. This is a movie, I always call this when I'm describing it to people a dark comedy because I can't think of a better phrase to describe it, even though that's not really accurate. The only real humor in it comes from Gyllenhaal's performance and how intensely uncomfortable he is. But it is, like, at many points, laugh out loud funny. And what's not laugh out loud funny, it is just kind of, like, unnerving and kind of off-putting funny. It is a really bleak movie. It's a really cynical movie. But the thing that might surprise people is how watchable it is. It doesn't feel like you're watching an art house movie. It doesn't feel like you're watching kind of a toil, even with it's got a really cynical worldview. There's a lot of horrible stuff in it. There's a lot of human suffering in this movie. But because of how snappily it's written, because of how kind of swiftly the film moves along, it is really easy to watch and it's really engaging. So if you feel like this might be, maybe you're someone who doesn't really watch a lot of heavy movies and you feel like this might be heavier than you like, you may want to give it a chance because even with its heavy subject matter, I would say it's a surprisingly accessible movie.
Yes, very much so. And, my final thoughts are, I really like this movie quite a bit. You talked about how watchable it is. Like, watching it on my second view, like, I remembered basically every, like, moment of this movie. So it was basically just doing, like, a refresher. Like, sometimes I watch a movie for the show or listen to an album and I'm like, oh, I really missed that part, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, or, like, just, whatever. But, like, basically every scene in this movie, I was like, oh, yeah, that fucking happened. Like, that was, because every scene in this movie is memorable in some way or another. And, we mentioned, obviously, it's a good companion piece for Drive, because they're just, once again, two similar characters in a lot of ways, but polar opposites in a lot of ways. I talked about the supervillain versus, quote-unquote superhero, but once again, like the Zack Snyder version of fucking Superman, I guess, or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Like the dark DC universe where fucking Joker gets gang raped in prison.
Something Awful Batman fan film. Do you know about that?
No, I don't. But honestly, though, Brian, I did tell you in Joker 2 that he literally gets gang raped in prison, right, Joker?
They stole that from his Something Awful poster.
Well, also the Cumtown subreddit mentioned that. We talked about Cumtown. They mentioned that on a post. Yeah. Like, why doesn't Joker get raped by Superman? And it's like, goddamn.
Why does Batman rape the Joker? Yeah.
But so either way, this movie's fucking fantastic. I really would recommend it. And if you're not in the mood for something really dark or something that is kind of challenging in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, obviously don't watch it at that moment. But if you're in the right headspace, this is a movie that I would 100% recommend. Once again, Jake Gyllenhaal is great. All the performances are good. It's a movie that is, ambitious, but not like super crazy. Like there's not like 15,000 explosions. It's not a fucking Michael Bay movie or whatever the fuck, right? But this is a movie that's, kind of smaller in scale for a Hollywood movie, but very, very good. Bill Paxton, we've talked a little about Bill Paxton, but he's fucking great in this movie. And he was great in fucking everything. Once again, rest in peace, Bill Paxton. And, Rene Russo's great in this movie too. And Ahmed's great. Even though he doesn't get a lot of screen time, but he's somebody that is, once again, very likable. He's somebody who, he's easily the most likable character in this movie because he's like the actual like human being in this movie.
Because he experiences pain and fear, and so you feel bad for him because he's just a homeless guy that, really
is being taken advantage of. Yeah. And also I do want to mention, I totally forgot to mention this, but there is a line read where he talks about Bed Bath & Beyond. He goes, Bed Bath & Beyond, which is interesting because he's like British in real life and his like British accent kind of like flickered on. But the film director was like, fuck it, it's a funny enough line, so he kept it in there. So I thought that was a little funny, little sleight of hand there. But either way, this is a great movie about just a very just creepy, unidentifiable, just social climber, just psychopath. And that's literally what he is. He is a violent psychopath who is willing to do whatever it takes, talk about the superficial charm. And also, I did mention it earlier, but the whole like the pep talk, like motivational motivational speaker, like for lack of a better word, like Sigma Grindset, like finance bro talking that he does. Like his whole speeches are awesome. He's so HR. He does a lot of HR speak.
It's like he spends all day like listening to self-help books and self-actualization books and grindset books and just like internalized all of it and spits it back out.
Yeah, so if you've ever seen a character like that or ever met a person like that, this is a really, really good movie to just be like, oh god, I knew a motherfucker like that. And this would be the logical fucking endpoint for somebody like that, for sure.
Yep.
All right, so that's our review. So let's get into our pluggables. So you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on Twitter.com. And as well, you can subscribe and follow us on both of our YouTube and our Spotify channels, where we are uploading every episode simultaneously to both platforms. And as well as always, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father campaign. You know, of course, our good friends Scott, Sean, and Robert are creating a fantastic series. You know, we've been plugging them forever and ever and ever, but we genuinely believe in their dreams. We believe in their project. You know, at this point, I think they're about a quarter of the way through their funding goal. And, you know, as we've mentioned on many episodes now, of course, they are in pre-production for future episodes, so they are creating the series. Even though they are only about a quarter of the way through, they are creating a project and content for everybody to watch in the future. So now more than ever, you really should donate to the project because they are creating that fucking series. Like, seriously.
Yeah. I spoke to Scott a few days ago, just checking in, saying hi. So their plan right now is to do filming for the next episode in the last week of September and the first few days of October. So that is their window of time that they want to get it filmed in. They're getting everything lined up. I think they just have, you know, they're still working on finishing up the script. Of course, Scott wrote an original script for it that they're now kind of figuring out the logistics for it. Sean is now figuring out the logistics for Scott's original screenplay. But their timeline is they want to film it last week of September. And they are confident like that is happening.
No, absolutely. As somebody who has been to that part of Oregon really during that time of the year, it's a pretty beautiful time of the year to be filming, so I totally get it.
It's going to look so cool. It's going to look so great. And again, the things that Scott and Sean are planning to do are really ambitious. We say it all the time, go watch the Lucifer and the Father pilot just to get an idea of the premise, because again, it is a pretty intriguing premise, and keep in mind when you watch that, that's their proof of concept, but the things that they've been working on, the things that they want to do with it, are almost like an anthology series. They want to jump around to different eras, different time frames, different like historical events. So while the series is happening at this point, they can use all the donations that they can get because they want to do some pretty, you know, for an independent creator, they want to do some pretty heady things. So anything you can do to support them, please do, and let us know that you came there through us and we'll match your donation. Because like we said, well, it's going to happen either way. They're determined to make Lucifer and the Father. Anything we can do to help them make it easier, make it the best show it possibly can be, we want to do.
No, absolutely. And yeah, as you mentioned for the donations, yeah, just send us an email, send us a YouTube comment, just tell us that you donated to the campaign, and we will, within reason, about $25 match that donation, as we promised and pledged for so long, because we really do want Scott, Sean, and Robert's like dreams to become a reality. And, you know, for another thing that we've been plugging forever, of course, as always, we're going to be plugging the Luigi Mangione Defense Fund. You know, of course, he is somebody who's being railroaded by our justice system, all the judicial misconduct. He's really just being used as an example of if you fight back against the system at all. And once again, want to be clear, we don't believe Luigi even did it. We believe he's totally innocent. Otherwise, they would have had a much stronger case. They wouldn't have done all this judicial misconduct. They wouldn't have paraded him around like somebody who shot the sheriff, basically.
It's just the fact that so many normal people like us are showing support and solidarity with him. That's what they need to make an example of.
Exactly. Like, even though, once again, we genuinely do believe that he didn't do it, but, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people do. Obviously, the justice system claims they know that he did it. But either way, like I said, we need to stand behind Luigi because he's just a really cool guy. He's somebody who has a lot of fans and somebody who has responded very positively and I would say very genuinely to his fans when, you know, he's been in jail so far. But like, and also, even though we've been mentioning a lot of the cringe things that have been happening around his, you know, trial and his, you know, upcoming criminal proceedings. But the one thing I do want to say, the actual based thing, is I just found this out a couple days ago as of recording, but apparently when he was originally arrested, it was found out that one of his Spotify playlists featured a Cheem song. So that's pretty based. You know, we just covered Cheem a few episodes ago, which is so cool. That's so fucking awesome.
So it goes with his positive and wholesome vibes. He's a high energy, positive boy.
Exactly. And, you know, he's somebody who very clearly believes in pop punk and nu metal revival, and that's based as fuck. So we should support him on that end alone.
Yeah. Please stick with our boy Luigi, stick with our boys Cheem.
Exactly. So, and we talked about the, pledging donations. So once again, just show us that you support or you donated through his campaign. Just send us a YouTube comment, send us an email, etc., and we will match those donations up to a reasonable amount. Because if this show ever becomes big and like 100 people are asking, we can't afford that. But for the one or two people that might do it because of us, we will absolutely match those donations. Because Brian and I have donated to the campaign at this point. And then we reviewed a movie right now that's about social strivers psychopathically trying to gain favor in a world, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing right now because we have a Patreon account, and if you give us $5 a month, we will find
you get to be part of a
community.
You get to be part of a community. You get to be at the ground floor of the MAO community. You get to help guide us along this journey. We really can use you. We see a lot of potential in you as a patron, and we hope you see a lot of potential in us too. We believe you wouldn't be here if you didn't.
Exactly. And, unlike the original Mao, who had a very successful cultural revolution, we will have a very failed cultural revolution. So we won't kill a lot of people.
We'll kill a moderate number of people. With your help.
Yeah.
If you donate to the Patreon, you get to be part of that.
Exactly. So, and the one that I'm always plugging is our tier. So for $5 a month, you get 2 to 4 episodes, or you get every episode 48 hours earlier than everybody else. Because, as Lou Bloom knows, the first 48 hours are the most important. And by that, I mean withholding evidence. So you can be at the cutting edge of reporting crime as it's happening. But either way, so yeah, first 48 hours are the most important, as I said earlier. So you get every episode 48 hours early, and you're guaranteed 2 to 4 episodes a month. That's $1.25, $2.50 per episode. That's a crazy deal. That's crazy. Folks, there's never been a better deal. I'm so good at making deals.
It's a great deal. You're not going to get a better shot than this. It's a great community. You're going to be part of it. You're going to meet with us. You're going to grow with us. This is MAO. This is Mao. The Middle Brow Cultural Revolution. There's not another one like it. People love to see it. More and more people are saying it's the hottest podcast for two white guys talking about movies. People love them. People can't get enough of it. They say it's not me saying it, but they love it.
Folks, they love it. They love it.
My friend, the late, great Lou Bloom, he said, I'd like to say if you see me, you're having a very bad day. You're having a very bad day if you see Lou.
And, he was telling me about his former cinematographer, Ricky, died, and he's like, oh, he fucking went out like Stan Chera, and he's like, no, he didn't go like Stan Chera. He went out like a man.
And I said, that's not the way you do it. That's not the way you do it when your guy dies. You don't film him. You don't film him to do that. But he's a great guy. Now, I wouldn't have done it, but he's a great guy, and I respect that he did it.
Oh, yeah. But, speaking of social strivers and presidents who are very great, I think we can agree. Actually, let's not agree with that. But I will say, ending off this episode, Brian, it's night. I'm feeling very sick right now, and I feel like I want to crawl to my bed. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really have the energy to get to my bed by walking. So I'm going to crawl to my bed at night. Would you agree with that, Brian?
I want to night crawl in my skin.
Absolutely. When I was watching this movie, Brian, I'm like, you know what? Why the fuck does he not have a German accent, and why is he not blue? This is stupid. Why the fuck am I watching this?
I'm for real. There is a 1995 X-Men animated direct-to-video TV movie that I had as a kid. I almost did a bit where I was going to pretend for about the first 5 minutes that I meant for you to watch that. I had this idea going back at the beginning of the week that I was not going to talk to you about the movie at all, and then when it came time to record, I was going to go, yeah, we're watching the 1995 X-Men direct-to-video animated feature Nightcrawler. You didn't watch that?
Absolutely. So, and everybody else where it's night and you need to crawl to bed, we're going to sign off here. So have a good night, everybody. Sleep tight. And if you see Lou Bloom in your real life, it's definitely going to be the worst day and night of your motherfucking life. I can tell you that much.
I'm going to be dreaming of him, personally. His oily hair and skin.
He looks like he just bathes in grease.
Yeah, he does. He looks like the fucking squeaky voiced teen from The Simpsons.
All right. So have a good night, everybody. Sleep tight. And once again, don't let Lou Bloom bite.